Even schakelen.
Ja.
Out of the relaxation now, so even turning around. I recognize myself immediately in the M band. And what I find beautiful is that the two paths or three, that in this time, in this area of time, then I think it's beautiful that now I recognize the first triangle from Kabbalah, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, in the three paths. And also the way how they work through all together, the uitstootingen. And I think it's nice that all the things I feel myself, it's in a scheme I recognize. So this gives a broader, more broad vision.
Okay, thank you.
For me, the language didn't matter. I listened to the words, but they did not have a meaning to me. They brought feeling, and the feeling told me what.
Okay, good.
Could you expand a bit on what you mean by the role of the seer as a guide? And you gave the example of guiding souls in the afterlife, or but it seems quite specific compared to the very general role as a healer or a teacher. So could you expand?
Yeah. In reading the slides, I didn't read everything that I put there, because I suddenly realized that I was describing levels of being with terms that I hadn't defined, that are technical, theosophical terms, and I didn't want to lose everybody by getting the mind tangled up in those terms. So there, at every level of being, on all the planes, we have different stages of human evolution. But we also have different stages of nature, spirit, and deva evolution. And there may be other kinds of beings too. So the idea for the seer is being able to see on a particular plane a being and its need, who it is, where it is, what its level of development is, what its next step is, and where it needs to go in order to take that next step. And the easiest way to illustrate that is through talking about people in the afterlife. It gets more difficult to say something about a place in the higher planes. But even with the afterlife, there are stages of the afterlife in the theosophical teaching that take place purely on the astral plane as a kind of purging of emotions and desires that were left over from the physical life. And then the astral body is left behind and the soul ascends to the lower mental level and then looks at its life from that perspective. And from that perspective, it looks at all the elements of its life and its beliefs and tries to see what fit with the soul's plan and what didn't fit. And then that lower mental body, is left behind, and the soul is liberated into the upper levels of the mental plane, the causal level, and is said to go into a deep period of rest and dream, where all of the wonderful things that were not able to be done, all the intentions, all of the higher ideals that were not expressed, the individual has a chance to feel what it was like to have lived through those things. And then the soul is ready for incarnation, and there is some kind of training and adjustment to the sort of body it will have and the karma it will work through, and also what opportunities it might have to realize those intentions when they're embodied in the next incarnation. So I labeled these stages because the role of the seer is to take that soul and move it from the astral level to the mental level to the higher mental level, and to support the movement back into physical reality, almost like leading the soul by the hand through each stage. There are many other ways in which that kind of guiding can show up, but that's the probably most intelligible or understandable way for me to describe it. So I hope that answers your question. Is it another one? Yeah, either way.
Okay, it was a kind of relief to me to hear that the mystics are kind of strict, harsh, firm type of person. Sometimes I identify myself as someone with a strong personality and also with harsh judgments on people, and a little patient with the minor problems in details of life. Yeah, but I was trained as a nurse, so I thought always I was very into the second the empaths, and I developed that, I think. But then I went, because of, I told Elizabeth the story, a patient called me in the general hospital. He was suffering from a kind of psychosis through morphine, and he said, "Get that redhead, she knows, she sees the little beast as well, get her." So, and so I sent them away when he was afraid of, and then I felt, oh, I can do that. So he gave me the confidence to work in the mental health industry, unfortunately. But I worked there for 46 years with people with serious mental health issues, and I was good. I think I felt joy with it, and I had a very good job there. Now I'm retired, and I came back into the schoot, the lab of the Theosophy, and now it's time for to develop my seers things, because I went to CERN a year ago in Geneva because I'm very interested in the quantum physics. Am I talking too much?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. And I like to study, and I want to know how things are, because I'm very curious. And I'm also a structurepath, so I love to have overzicht and overview and lists, and but what am I? Altogether, it's a little bit of a mixture, but I was very, I also consider myself as a mystic because my ego is very developed. So I get what is what? And is it my ego? Is it one other minor thing is that my father died when I was 7, so since I was 7, I have this very strong connection because our Father who's in heaven, it was my father. Yeah, so that's what I live with all my life.
Okay.
So, here's the soup. Can you say for the soup?
The good thing is that you're thinking about your life and the different stages. And it isn't always easy to know about the first 2 stages, because I think I had some definitely seer, strong, mystic less for a good part of my early life. And then I really needed to work on the empath. But it sounds like you may, in the way that you described it, mystic would be the first, and empath the second, and then seer the third thing that you added. And I found that people seem to know at some deeper level in the mind which one of these things they're related to. And it's usually a question of getting rid of concepts in order to settle down into that. I can very easily see, well, here's another way to think about it. There would be a mystic empath, and there would be an empath mystic, depending on which one is first. And these subtypes are, I think, important for many older souls, more advanced souls, because we come in carrying 2 of them, more or less developed, and then the third one needs to be added. So I'm not prepared to do much talking about these subtypes, but an empath mystic is someone who would naturally be a kind of energy healer. A mystic empath would be someone who helps people cut through illusions and discover what is real by having an empathic understanding of who they are. And it sounds like the career that gave you all this joy was doing exactly that. Supporting people who are suffering from mental illness and getting clear about what is or isn't real. And then doing that from a place of empathy so that you were not imposing something that wasn't true on them, but having the truth emerge from within them. And the third part wasn't necessarily required because you didn't need to know the labels and the terms and so on. But now, perhaps you're adding that. Now, I promised that I wouldn't actually tell people what they are. However, if somebody tells a story, like you've told, it's sometimes easy to see how it fits. And then it becomes helpful to everybody else with respect to thinking about how they fit too. So I think probably mystic empath, and that's even the order that you described it in. And then, as I mentioned, seer after that. And this is a good demonstration of what I mean by how we start from one place that's who we are and we're comfortable, and then we move beyond that by adding the other kinds of things. Because if you were only mystic, what kind of job would you have? But if you're a mystic empath working with people with mental illness, then there's a need, right? So, someone else?
Very fast finished. I noticed that I was astonished. I think of myself as, first of all, an empath. And when we were going through the stages, I thought, well, all of it feels almost the same. Then one of the last one sentence has always affected me strongly, like that this in every aspect. So, think about that.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Are you especially interested in the names of the bodies and the planes and how they fit together and what their order is? Or does it seem like that's not so important?
Not so important.
Okay. So that eliminates one, right? So the question then is almost the same as what we were talking about here, and that is mystic slash empath, empath slash mystic. That's a beginning point for thinking about things like this. So again, I'm not going to try to tell you what I think about it. Someone else?
I was listening to you reading the statements about the mystic and was listening along, and I was getting into a trance. And then afterwards, I couldn't hear the rest of it because I was sitting there thinking, I know Kurt is speaking, but I wish he would be using words. That would be very convenient. And I heard one of your statements about the empath, and then your last sentence about the seer. But I couldn't understand words for that whole book.
Sounds like you went into energy. So that says something about the mystic element being strong. You love the levels and the planes, right? The bodies and the planes. So maybe mystic seer or seer mystic, and then empath gets added later. Just as a guess.
It is always difficult for me to recall what has been said when I'm really present. I forget it. But I had three impressions. The impression of the mystic was for me a path of initiation and then detaching from the sequence, so from physical and then emotional and mental and so on. The path of the empath, also initiation, but more on the same level with that which he or she is empathic with, so more level work. And the path of the seer was more, for me, also initiation, but top down, so looking down, who can I help? And then I found myself more empath, but I recognized the mystic part because empath I am because I think I'm compassing and not so looking up or down. But the mystic part speaks to me because I also would like to grow and to develop in the teachings and in the work I'm doing. So, as a conclusion, I think that empath, however, I didn't think about it so much. I think empath is more my route, and then a little bit with the mystic as well.
Okay, good. One thing to think about is, because the seer has a foot in both worlds, it's a little harder to know whether you're a seer, because you have both of those almost automatically, in the sense of being able to go back and forth, as I mentioned earlier, between a life of service and then a life of control and then another life of service. So I think one of the reasons I came up with this system was to help understand myself better, because I was having a kind of identity crisis about whether I was one or the other, and actually I was on a different path. It was not a named or recognized path. Anyone else?
I didn't like to hear the statements from two categories. But I also couldn't agree, or not agree, but could say that in saying I know the way or the destiny or the purpose. I couldn't say that I know it, but I know that I didn't feel. I didn't agree with the statements. I felt good with one category, but I couldn't say that. One statement was, I think, I know the purpose or I know the destiny, but I don't know it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You live from it. You can feel that you live from it. And the description may not have fit completely. You might have recognized little bits and pieces of it. The thing is, if I'm standing in front of you as an authority, and I'm telling you what is and not what I think might be, then it's only natural to feel like it couldn't be true. I'm only really asking everyone to just consider it as a way. My purpose with this seminar on initiation is to try to get away from what I was describing yesterday, with the robes and the flashing lights and the stars and the higher beings, and it happens in the island of Shambhala. It has to be an internal feeling, and it has to be a recognition of a way to go forward. And it's never easy to put that across without sounding like an authority or like dogma. And that's not at all my intention. People's path is a very personal thing, and we know it at some level, and we live it whether we can recognize someone else's description of it or not. This is just one description. I heard someone say once long ago a phrase that I always think about, and it's this: reality consists in as many descriptions of it as you have tolerance for. Reality consists in as many descriptions of it as you have tolerance for. Because one description is never complete. Two is more complete than one, but still not complete. And so it goes. So what I'm offering is a description that, if you wish, you can add to any other description that you know, but none of it is final. And by the way, I'm not expressing this because I received what you said as a criticism. I knew it was not intended that way. I just want to make it very clear, the danger of any kind of system talking about types is that people start to say, oh, my astrological sign is this, and that means I do that, and then it's cheapened and it's not really helpful. On the other hand, my experience of all more developed souls is they don't want to have any kind of role put on them. They want to be the expression of the energy of who they are and not be told it's this or this or this, or you can do this but not that. And again, something like what I've offered here is really a help. If it seems to be a help, then it can be set aside if it's not. The important thing is that feeling of internal connection to knowing really what your next step should be. Any other questions or comments?
Actually, what I was about to say, you said it. During this process where you were reading at the beginning, I was trying to match myself to see whether I'm a mystic or empath or a seer. But then I thought, does it really matter whether I'm 60% mystic or plus 20% seer plus whatever? I'm just who I am. I'm evolving. I had a past that the experience has built up kind of natural some lessons. I became who I am now, and I'm evolving to something. I don't know. And does it really matter? As long as I'm aware, I'm present, I'm with myself and with the world, I'm fine. I don't need any labels or categories or classification. That's my inner talk during the process. But Becky, you said that.
But I can tell a story that may make it clear why I think it's important to have some of these ideas to consider. So I had for many years a student. I would call her a mystic. When she would come into class, we begin each class with everyone sharing something about what's happened for them. So her sharing was always very mystical, not easily understood, all about energies of various kinds. Other people in the class were very impatient with her. I did somewhat understand what she was saying. But then, when we would talk about bodies and planes, she would say, they don't exist. This isn't necessary. And this went on as a battle of wills for several years. And then, she decided to become a spiritual teacher of her own. And she suddenly discovered that the vocabulary that I'd been giving her was valuable, because otherwise all she could do was sit and radiate and hope that everybody got it, you know? And now she could talk about what she was radiating so people could actually open a pathway to let it in. So this is, pedagogically speaking, this is why something like this can be important. So I am finished, I think, unless there's anybody else who has a comment to make. Tonight we'll do our In the Twilight experience of sharing stories. I hope people will be willing to share this evening. Personal stories about spiritual experiences of any kind. And I'll give some guidelines before we start about how we can do that in a way that is safe for ourselves as someone sharing, and safe for ourselves as people receiving. So, thank you.